What happened, Doc, about my senior year in high school, my aunt said, Grandpa Jesse, kind of like the guru of the community, you know? Grandpa Jesse is about to leave us. He's up in age now. He can't be with us much longer. She said, I want you to go and interview him and get the history of our little settlement, that little community. He'd been a part of it right from after slavery. He was born 10 years before slaves were emancipated. So I got my little pencil and notebooks and things. I went to, by prearrangement, we sat in his backyard under the oak tree. He would come out and we would meet from 7 in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'd half an hour for lunch. That was his prescription for our meetings. That had been the rhythm of his life. And so he started telling me the story of how the land was acquired and all of that, and the church was built, the little school was built, and how they all, you know, worked together to make that happen. And then he said, Brother Wood, I remember it like it was yesterday, the day we slaves learned that we'd been set free. He said, the young soldiers, he said, I was 10 years old. I said, I believe I was 10 years old, he said. He said, the Union soldiers rode up on the plantation and said, get all the slaves together. And said, finally, after about 3 hours, we were all together out of the fields, big house. So we were finally together under this big oak tree. He said, the boy sat on a horse, the soldiers sat on a horse and took us paper and started reading, just read and read and read. And finally he stopped, finished reading, looked at us and said, nobody said anything. He said, we thought the old guru would say, he didn't say anything either. So the young boy started reading it again. So he read it, and finally it was finished, and he looked at us. He said, I don't think y'all understand. This paper says, Mr. Lincoln has set y'all free. He said, finally the old guru looked at the soldier and said, young man, whatever that is you say Mr. Lincoln done for us, go back and thank him. But we know that the great God Almighty didn't give us Jubilee. I didn't realize I had dropped my pencil. I'm sitting there with my mouth wide open, I'm sure, right? That became a seminal event in my life, all of my work, my scholarship and all, and I'll say a little bit later about why what we were doing with civil rights was a Jubilee Light. We didn't get the whole impact of the economic and the spiritual. We got the spiritual, the social action, all that stuff, but we didn't get to the economic part of it, but that's what he gave me. When you understand the importance of Jubilee, you will understand why the first 50 years out of slavery was the most fruitful in terms of African-American institutional infrastructure building. Out of slavery, first 50 years, acquisition of over 15 million acres of land, which is now down to 2 million and declining. The building of over 120 African-American colleges and universities within that first 50-year period out of slavery. So Grandpa Jesse was actually the grandfather of my first cousins. And I would say that the impact on my life probably was probably second only to, but after my close family, of course, because I learned things from my father. He was a laborer at that point in his life, but he ran his own farm. And so he would give me assignments. He'd be leaving in the morning, and he'd say, now I want you to take me in the garden and say, look, these beans need to be weeded now. When you come home from school, get your, have your little snack, and then go and weed these beans, right? And he'd get home, and I'd be over at the neighbor's house entertaining. And he would drive in, and he would check right away, and I'd hear this, Virgil! I said, oh my God, I'm gonna get killed. I was a reluctant gardener. But I learned gardening. I think of myself now, Brother Sylvester, in the language of Thomas Jefferson, old man, yet young farmer. I think of myself as an old man, as a young farmer, And the work I do now, I think of it as farming.